On October 16, 1859, radical abolitionist John Brown made a raid on Harper's Ferry, trying to start a rebellion to free the slaves from the South. And in his seminal masterpiece, The Civil War, Ken Burns referred to this episode as the METEOR. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. Gentlemen, I'm not comparing Charlie Kirk to John Brown in any way. John Brown used violence. Charlie Kirk used persuasion. But the thing that is striking about the Charlie Kirk assassination to me is the worldwide repercussions of it. It is often said that act of John Brown was the spark that lit the powder keg of the Civil War. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 was the spark that set off the powder keg of World War I. I personally have lived through a couple of high-profile assassinations and deaths. John Kennedy's assassination shocked the world, but didn't really lead to any major change in things. I remember where I was when I heard that Diana, Princess of Wales, had died. But Charlie Kirk's assassination has touched off a worldwide response. And that tells me that, as in the other cases of John Brown and Franz Ferdinand, that there was a powder keg there ready to explode, that there was a pre-existing situation of tension that the assassination finally lit a fuse to. Steve, we've seen rallies in London, Melbourne, Poland, Hungary, Korea, where people are holding up pictures of Charlie Kirk and saying, "We are Charlie Kirk." And that doesn't make any sense in a vacuum. What the assassination of Charlie Kirk seems to indicate to me is that it is an indication that not only left-wing politics, but elitist control of the media and the message and the narrative have been swallowed whole by decent normal people for 2 generations now, and that they have had enough of it.
Yeah. In my segment this week, we talked about how awful the media response has been from most of the mainstream media. Although I do want to get a shout out to NBC. They were actually quite good on the day of Charlie's assassination. That said, the overall temperature of the media has been to turn things up instead of cool things down, which is what you would want after this. And they continue, generally speaking, to portray Kirk as some sort of bomb-throwing radical, which he was not. He was a guy who wanted to talk. He wanted a dialogue. He was respectful. He listened. And that is such a rare skill these days. It's a miracle. And yet, despite this media portrayal of him, and social media portrayal, I should mention as well, the truth has somehow outed itself, or been outed. I don't know if it's on X, if it's on by word of mouth, whatever the means is. People didn't buy the narrative. We've never seen it rejected so completely, so thoroughly, and so quickly as we have seen in the 6 days now since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And you can't rouse the normals like this and expect things to stay the same.
It's hard to rouse the normies under any circumstances. That's kind of the point. Can I ask you a quick follow-up?
Yeah, please.
What do you think Charlie Kirk, not his assassination, what do you think Charlie Kirk represents to Korean people, to people in Australia, people in Poland, people on the streets in Britain? What do you think he represented to them, or the assassination of him as well, I guess? What do you think that represented to people, so that people who were not part of the American argument about politics at all saw him as a martyr? Because clearly, I think that's what he was.
Yeah, I had wondered if maybe from time to time there's sort of general thinking when you're feeling a little philosophical. I thought maybe we're no longer in an age of martyrs, that martyrdom was sort of an outdated concept, and boom, we got one last Wednesday. I thought I would never see that. And the reason, Bill, to answer your initial question is, what do you think foreigners, what did Charlie represent? America.
Wow. Scott, there's a term that's been used throughout intellectual circles for a while. It's called the death of reason, and I think that's what people's reaction to the Charlie Kirk assassination was, is that it was evidence of the death of reason, and I don't think that the full impact that we saw last week could be understood without the assassination of that Ukrainian woman on the train. I think these two are linked in a way, and I think basically a 1-2 punch of we no longer live in a world of laws and decency and that acts of outright, absolutely unjustified aggression have become commonplace. And I think that the mourning that we're seeing around the world from people who certainly never knew him, maybe not even really followed his work, but it's a sense of grief, of mourning, and I get the feeling that it's a sense of mourning among regular people that the world of sanity and civility and law, the rule of law, appear to have evaporated, and we all watched it happen.
I think that is the appearance. However, I've heard this among some of my colleagues elsewhere and friends. It's kind of sweeping statements about how the world has fundamentally changed. I don't think that the world has fundamentally changed. I think that this is a reflection of a strain in humanity that we need to be ever vigilant against, because it's always there. But I don't think we need to catastrophize it by generalizing it. I think it's enough of a catastrophe on its own merits. That said, I think that anybody who looks at Charlie Kirk and thinks that there was, something evil about him, and I just don't think evil people don't ask their opponents to line up in front of them and try to persuade them that they're wrong. When evil people have existed in this world, that lineup is against a wall somewhere that nobody sees, with a row of people with rifles taking them out. This is not a Saddam Hussein. This is not a fascist. This is a guy who openly invited people into civil dialogue who disagreed with his point of view, and he ever had a line of those people eager to talk to him. And what that says to me is those people felt safe. They felt heard. They felt they were going to get a chance to express themselves. They didn't line up in front of Charlie Kirk so that they could be shouted down or ridiculed. They lined up in front of him because they knew that their ideas would get a hearing. It was really a salute to Charlie Kirk every time somebody who disagreed with him laid hands on that microphone and stood in front of him and did that. Charlie Kirk did not treat anybody as other. He did not distance himself from them. He invited them. He welcomed them. He engaged them. And, you reminded me a few years ago when people are saying now in rallies, they're saying we are Charlie Kirk. You remember after the French satire magazine, Charlie Hebdo, after that got shot up, there was a Je suis Charlie movement, which is essentially, if we translated it, I am Charlie or we are Charlie Hebdo. That faded pretty quickly in a short period of time. That feeling, I'm sure it's more prominent in France and maybe goes on. I don't think this one fades so easily, but I also think it's not going to stay focused on Charlie Kirk. I think it's going to make more and more people in the United States and around the world realize that this cannot stand as an event that is treated as if it somehow shut down the dialogue. In fact, it should make people redouble their efforts to connect with other people, to treat people with dignity and respect, and as Charlie Kirk always did, to try to share a little bit of Jesus in everything he did.
Well, I'll give you my honest, fully honest appraisal of how I felt once I'd had time to process what had actually happened. My overwhelming thought was simply this, and I don't know if either of you two guys agree with it, and it's not important if you do, it's my personal opinion, but I think a lot of people feel this way. After I witnessed this and witnessed the follow-up of people celebrating and the demonic glee in their response, just the sheer elation, I came to realize when Charlie Kirk was assassinated that this is no longer a political conflict. It is a spiritual conflict. This is a moral and spiritual conflict between ideologies that celebrate murder and ideologies that don't, between ideologies that burn down cities when something upsets them and ideologies that have prayer vigils. It is, to me, as clear as can be, a fundamental spiritual difference between these two poles of political philosophy. And I think a large indicator that this is how many people feel is that there have been reports of large numbers of people who are either going to church for the first time or going back to church for the first time, people who are reacting to this in a way that indicates that they are having a spiritual and moral reevaluation of their lives rather than just a political reevaluation of which side of the left-right divide that they're standing on. I don't think that this is something that's going to be forgotten soon. I think this is a meteor. I think this is a society-changing, perhaps even a world-changing event, because I think it has made crystal clear that the stakes are much higher than we originally thought, and that everything that normal people have just taken for granted to be what everybody would just generally agree on is not what everybody just generally agrees on. I think we've come to realize that there is a moral and spiritual corrosion of a significant percentage of our population that has become so not only inhuman but unhuman to celebrate something this grotesque, this visually grotesque, this crystal clear event. That's what I'm taking out of it, and I don't think I'm the only one. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Right Angle.